Hey everybody, it's time for another Rahdo Rules Run-Through with Ryan, and today we've got Namiji. Ryan, let's set sail.
Thanks, Rahdo. If I pull one more crab out of this bag, my entire career as a fisherman is over. Hi, it's Ryan from Knights Around a Table. Here's how you play Namiji. You and your friends play anglers in a Japanese archipelago not too far from the Tokaido Road. You'll sail around the map catching fish and crustaceans, appreciating nature, and gaining special abilities that give you a leg up either now or later. You can travel as fast as you like, but you can never return to spaces you've skipped over, which may benefit your rival anglers. When everyone has made a full circuit of the archipelago, you count up the points you've earned along the way and any bonuses you've gained to see who's had the most successful fishing trip. You can play Namiji either clockwise or counterclockwise, but you and your friends have to all pick the same direction off the top of the game and stick with it. We'll be traveling clockwise for the rest of this explanation. Each player gets a boat, and your boats get lined up at the first dock in a random order. The player furthest back always gets to move first, which means that as the game progresses, that straggling player may get to take multiple turns before catching up with the rest of the pack. You can move as many spaces as you want, and then wherever you stop, you get to do something according to the icon on the station. Each space along the board can only accommodate one boat, so if you started here, you'd have to skip past all these spaces and choose an empty one. You can never move backwards, so you've effectively missed all of these opportunities to do things. There are some double space stations that only come into effect during a 4 or 5 player game. The first player to stop at one goes closest to the sea route, and then another player is allowed to stop on the other dot. The player farther from the sea route is considered to be behind this player when you want to figure out who gets to move next. Docks are a mandatory stopping point. All of the boats have to fill up the dock before everyone can set sail again. When everyone reaches the final dock where you began the game, you count up the points from the different activities you completed to see who's won. Let's take a look at those activities. Activities. There are 5 different activities you can complete while you sail around the board. Catch a fish, net a couple of fish, trap some crustaceans, send an offering, build a panorama, draw a card from the sacred rock, or dock your boat. When you catch a single fish at this station, you get to take a face-up or face-down fish from the school and then turn a fish face-up. You have a player board with an empty rack for catching fish. The first fish you catch has to go up here, and then every other fish you catch has to go orthogonally adjacent to one of your other fish. If you fill an entire row or column with fish of the same type or color, you earn the number of points indicated on that row or column. So this would get you 3 points, but this wouldn't because they're not the same color. But this is fine because they're all the same shape. You don't have to complete a row or column before starting a new one, but a fish laid is a fish played for the rest of the game. If you don't like the fish you caught, you can throw it back into the school face up and skip adding it to your rack. At one of these stations, you can cast your net into the water and pull out a tile with 2 fish on it. These double tiles help you fill your rack faster, but they can be fussier to place. They're not allowed to go out of bounds. Diagonal placement is a no. And if you don't want to place the tile you drew, sink it to the bottom of the stack and end your turn. When you roll up to a crustacean station, you get to draw up to 5 tiles out of this bag. Each crustacean you pull gets you a point at the end of the game. But if you draw a second crab, you go bust, and you have to toss everything you just drew back into the bag and end your turn empty-handed. There are 3 different stations that let you build one of 3 panoramas: a dolphin, an octopus, and a whale, which span 3, 4, and 5 cards apiece. Whenever you stop on one of these spots, you just add the next card in sequence to your panorama, and immediately score the number of points on the card. If you're the first to complete any of these vistas, you earn a bonus completion card that's worth 3 points. And there's only one of these cards up for grabs for each panorama, so it's a race to complete them. You can only have one of each type of panorama, so double dolphins is a no-no. Well, don't blame me, I didn't make the rules. These 4 offering tokens cost you points by the end of the game if you don't get rid of them. If you finish with all 4 tokens, you lose 15 points. It's a 10-point loss here and a 3-point loss if you're still holding on to one of them. Whenever you stop at a whirlpool station, you can send your topmost offering adrift to the middle of the board and regain some of those lost points. At a Sacred Rock station, you can draw 2 cards from the Sacred Rock deck, keep one, and sink the other to the bottom of the deck. Your new card goes face down in front of you because it contains some sort of secret goal that will help you score bonus points by the end of the game. So, for example, this one gets you 4 endgame points if you've caught 3 crabs. And this one gets you 3 points if you have at least 1 card in each of the 3 panoramas at the end of the game. If you're the first to arrive at a dock, you have to pick one of the spaces and wait there until the other players have caught up. You can't just sail right past. You only use as many slips as you have players, so if you're in a 3-player game, just pretend these 2 don't exist. If you choose the space that's farthest from the sea route, you'll be the first player to embark once it's time to get moving again. If you choose the space closest to the sea route, then when everyone arrives, you get to draw player count plus 1 cards from this deck. You get to choose one of these cards first, and when you've chosen, you pass the deck to whoever's in the slip that's next closest to the sea route. The dock cards are either going to be meals, which get you points immediately, like this bento box that fills your belly full of 5 fresh, tasty points, or they'll be upgrades that give you some sort of special ability for the rest of the game, like this talisman that lets you look through the whole deck of cards when you stop at a Sacred Rock station and take the card you want. Once all players have chosen a card, you sink the unwanted card to the bottom of the briny deck, and play resumes with the player who's farthest from the sea route getting first choice of the next run of stations. When you reach the final dock, the first player there grabs the highest value 7-point early bird token, and each successive player gets a token worth fewer and fewer points. Endgame. You can track points while you play, but the nice thing about Namiji is that if you mess up, you can always audit everyone's score by just counting up the stuff they've got. So, tally up the completed rows and columns in your rack. Remember, you only score these if they have fish of the same color or same type in them. Count up your crustaceans for 1 point apiece. You get points matching the numbers in each corner of the panorama cards you've collected, and you may have earned 1 or more bonus cards for being the first to finish them. Don't forget the points on your early bird token. Then count up any points from meals you grabbed at the dock, and then reveal and tally up the endgame scoring conditions on your Sacred Rock cards. And finally, subtract a certain number of points for any offerings you still have. Whoever has the most points is hailed the best angler in the archipelago, and in the case of a tie, all tied players share in the victory. Strategy. Namiji is not a complex game, but there are strategic decisions to make as you travel around the map. The primary one is how far to move your boat. You might be racing another player to finish that octopus panorama so you can claim the bonus card, so you decide to skip way ahead to the next octopus station. But that means that the person in last place is free to visit every single station along the way unimpeded, milking the game for extra points. Still, if you beat everyone to the next dock and get first pick of cards, you could grab an easy 4 or 5 points by taking a meal, which could be more than the points earning potential of the trailing players. There's a lot of luck in crustacean fishing. You could pull out 5 tokens for the full 5 points, or pull 2 crabs right away and immediately go bust. But pay attention to the number of non-crab crustaceans that have been safely pulled from the bag and are sitting on your opponent's boards, because your success at crustacean fishing goes down as the crab to not crab ratio inside the bag increases. There are a ton of points to be gained by filling your rack with fish you catch, but each time you stop at a fishing station, you only get 1 fish from the school. There are 12 empty spots for fish in your rack, so you'd need to stop at fishing stations 12 times throughout the game to fill up all of the spots. And since it's mostly going to be a random face-down draw, well, who's to say you'll get the fish you need to score? Perhaps more crucially, there only are 12 fishing stations on the board. So unless you're the only player who's stopping at these stations, which is highly unlikely, you're probably going to have empty spaces in your rack. Aha, you say, then I'll just go net fishing. Well, sure, but net fishing is a blind draw that gets you a double tile, and if that tile isn't what you need, it's really easy to spoil rows and columns in your rack and score nothing. Sacred Rock cards are great, but while you do get a choice of 1 from a blind draw of 2, There's no guarantee that either of these cards will dovetail into your strategy reliably. Or maybe, if it's early enough in the game, you let a Sacred Rock card determine your strategy. Or you decide to pivot because you anticipate enough opportunities will crop up that'll let you capitalize on a Sacred Rock card. And that can all depend on what you think your opponents are going for. A final word about Namiji. It's not a long game. You might be chugging along thinking, well, great, I just need to finish up this whale panorama with 2 more cards. And then realize there are only 2 whale stations left on the trip. And because of the way turn order works, you'll probably have to count yourself out of at least one of them. It's a careful dance, this fishing life, and there definitely is an opportunity to weigh your options and make better or worse choices as you play the game. Setup. To set up the game, lay out all the fish tokens face down into the school, and then turn one face up. Everyone picks a color, and then takes a player board with 4 offerings on it, and a boat. Agree together on a direction to travel, either clockwise or counterclockwise, and then randomize the boats in the starting dock. Shuffle and stack the Sacred Rock cards, the net tokens, the dock cards, and the 3 stacks of panorama cards, ordered by number to make it easier to find what you're looking for. You can keep the panorama bonus cards off to the side, along with the early bird tokens. As many tokens as there are players, using the highest value tokens available. Decide on the first player by using Trial by Fish. 2-player games. If you want to play with 2 players, you introduce a dummy boat that travels around with you. That boat moves first whenever it's the farthest behind, as usual, but the player whose boat is farthest ahead gets to decide where the dummy boat goes. When everyone piles into a dock, you draw 4 cards. When it's the dummy boat's turn to take a card, you discard 1 face down at random from the selection. When the dummy boat reaches the last dock, the player who moved it discards the early bird token with the highest value on it. And now you're ready to play Namiji.
Thanks, Ryan. I think we've got it. And if you folks would like to learn a little bit more about this game, you can follow the links that are on the screen right now or down in the show notes in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.